Hello, children. Let us continue the second part of your history, chapter number 3, ruling the countryside. Children, in our first part, we have learned the company becomes the Diwan, how that means the East India Company become Diwans or governing body, and revenue for the company, how they collected, and the need to improve agriculture and what are the problems they face there regarding the settlement. So we have done up to this problem, the problem which were faced by them. Now let us continue page number 29. A new system is devised. A new system is devised. Devised means plan or invent by careful thought. By the early 19th century, many of the company officials were convinced that the system of revenue had to be changed again. So by the early part of 19th century, many of the company officers were convinced means cause someone to believe firmly in the truth of something, that the here that means about the system of revenue had to be changed again, explain in order to uh, meet the expenditure. So as revenue, as money is needed much, that's why revenue had to be changed again, they feel. How could revenues be fixed permanently at a time when the company needed more money to meet its expenses of administration and trade? How could these revenues, it can be fixed permanently at a time when the company is needed more money in order to meet the expenditure of administration and trade. In the northwestern provinces of the Bengal Presidency, most of this area is now in Uttar Pradesh. An Englishman called Holt Mackenzie devised the new system which came into effect in 1822. So, in the northwestern provinces, that in that part of the Bengal Presidency, at present it means most of the area, it belongs to Uttar Pradesh. An Englishman called Holt Mackenzie, he planned what here? The new system which came into effect in the year 1822. He felt that the village was an important social institution in North Indian society and it needed to be preserved. So he felt, Holt Mackenzie, he felt that the village was an important social institution in North Indian society and it needed to be preserved. It is needed to preserve or to make it safe. Under his directions, collectors went from village to village, inspecting the land, measuring the fields, and recording the customs and rights of different groups. So, under his directions, collectors, they went from one village to another village. They used to inspect the land, and by the way, they measured the fields and a recording the customs and rights of different groups. The estimated revenue of each plot within a village was added up to calculate the revenue that each village or mahal had to pay. So the estimated, whatever plan estimated means planned revenue of each plot within a village was added up to calculate the revenue that each village or mahal had to pay. But see here at the above corner of this page, mahal means in British revenue, you can see here, mahal in British revenue records mahal is a revenue state which may be a village or a group of villages. That is called mahal here. This demand was to be revised periodically, not permanently fixed. So this demand, it was revised from time to time. Periodically means from time to time, not permanently fixed. It is not like that. That means which is fixed at a time. For that means long time. It is not like that. The charge of collecting the revenue and paying it to the company was given to the village headman rather than the jamindar. So the charge for collecting that revenue from that places and paying it to the company, it was given to village headman rather than the jamindar. This system came to be known as the Mahalwari settlement. So the system by which village headmen used to collect the revenue and pay to the company. So this system came to be known as the Mahalwari system, Mahalwari settlement. The Munro system. Munro means voice. It is a system in which the farmers are declared as the owner of land. Remember, okay, in the Munro system, the farmers are declared here as the owner of the land. In the British territories in the south, there was a similar move away from the idea of permanent settlement. So, in the British territories regions in the south, there was a similar that is move away from the idea of permanent settlement. The new system that was devised came to be known as the Rayotwa or Rayotwari. So the new system that was devised, okay, it comes in plan, came to be, it was known as the Rayotwa or Rayotwari. It was tried on a small scale by Captain Alexander Reed in some of the areas that were taken over by the company after the wars with Tipu Sultan. So it was tried on a small scale in some parts, okay, by Captain Alexander Reed, okay, in some of the areas that were taken over by the company after the wars, that means which was took place with Tipu Sultan. Subsequently, subsequently means afterwards, okay, subsequently developed by Thomas Munro, this system was gradually extended all over South India. So afterwards, it was developed by Thomas Munro, and this system was gradually, slowly and slowly, that means it extended all over South India. Reed and Munro felt that in the South there were no traditional jamindars. Munro, Reed and Munro, they felt what? That in the South there were no traditional jamindars. The settlement, they argued, had to be made directly with the cultivators Cultivators means here riots, who had tilled the land for generations. So the settlement, they argued, had to be made directly with the cultivators, those who are cultivating, who had tilled, prepared land for agricultural purposes, and the land for generations, which that means the land, that means it was from, that means their forefathers. Their fields had to be carefully and separately surveyed before the revenue assessment was made. Their fields had to be carefully, in a careful manner, and separately surveyed before the revenue assessment was made, before making the revenue assessment. So their fields had to be carefully and separately surveyed. Monroe thought that the British should act as paternal father figures, protecting the riots under their charge. So Monroe, he thought that the British should act, the action of British, it should be as paternal father. Paternal means father's father. Okay, figures protecting the riots under their charge. All was not well. Within a few years after the new systems were imposed, it was clear that all was not well with them. So within a few years, within a few years after the new system were imposed, as the new system started, it was clear that all was not well with them. Driven by the desire to increase the income from land, revenue officials fixed too high a revenue demand. Driven by the desire, by the wanted of, that means to increase the income from land, revenue officials fixed too high a revenue demand. Peasants means the cultivators were unable to pay. They were unable to pay. Riots fled the countryside and villages became deserted in many regions. So, yes, that means these farmers, they were unable to pay. So riots fled the countryside. They, that means, began to go, that means, to the village areas and or countrysides. As a result of that, that very portion, that very area, it become deserted in many. That means that very many regions of that area become deserted, where that means no farmers remain. Then optimistic officials, optimistic officials means confident. Okay, officials had imagined that the new system would transform the peasants into rich, enterprising farmers. So this confident officials had imagined, they imagined what, that the new system would transform the peasants into rich, enterprising farmers. But this did not happen. But it did not happen in that way. Crops for Europe. Let us see. The British also realized that the countryside could not only yield revenue, it could also grow the crops that Europe required. The British, they also feel what, they realized that the countryside could not only yield revenue, it could also grow the crops that which required by European people. Okay, Europe. By the late 18th century, the company was trying its best to expand the cultivation of opium and indigo. So, by the late 18th century, so here the company was trying its best in order to expand the cultivation of opium and indigo. Opium it is a drug, and then indigo, a tropical plant of the pea family. So which is used for cloth dyeing. In the century and a half that followed, the British persuaded or forced cultivators in various parts of India to produce other crops. Jute in Bengal, tea in Assam, sugarcane in the United Provinces, now Uttar Pradesh, wheat in Punjab, cotton in Maharashtra, and Punjab rice in Madras. She, in the century and a half that followed, the British they persuaded or forced cultivators in different parts of India in order to produce other crops such as jute in Bengal, tea in Assam, sugarcane in United Provinces, that is Uttar Pradesh at present days, wheat in Punjab, cotton in Maharashtra, and Punjab, rice in Madras. How was this done? Let us see here. The British, the British used a variety of methods to expand the cultivation of crops that they needed. The British they used a variety of methods. They implemented different methods in order to expand the cultivation of crops that they are needed. Let us take a closer look at the story of one such crop, one such method of production. Here, let us see or take a closer look at the story of one such crop, one such method of production. Does color have a history? Figure 5 and 6, see here, are two images of cotton prints. The image on the left, figure 5, shows a kalamkari print. This type of print it is known as kalamkari print, created by weavers of Andhra Pradesh in India. So it was created by weavers of our Andhra Pradesh in India. On the right is a floral cotton print designed and produced by William Morris, a famous poet and artist of 19th century. So on the right side, it is a floral cotton print designed and produced by William Morris. He was a famous poet and artist of 19th century Britain. There is one thing common in the two prints. So see, one thing is common in here in the two prints. Both use a rich blue color, commonly called indigo. Both use a common, see here, both use a rich blue color and commonly called indigo. Do you know how this color was produced? So this color, indigo color, how it was produced? Do you know it? The blue that you see in these prints was produced from a plant called indigo. So this blue which you can see in these prints, it was produced from a plant, and the name of that plant is called indigo plant. It is likely that the blue dye used in the Morris prints in 19th century Britain was manufactured from indigo plants cultivated in India. So it is likely that the blue dye used in the Morris prints in 19th century Britain. It was manufactured from indigo plants, which was cultivated in India. For India was the biggest supplier of indigo in the world at that time. So for our country, India, okay, for that means India, it was the biggest supplier of indigo in the world at that time. British, they compelled them to grow indigo. Why the demand for Indian indigo? So indigo means, boys, I already told you, a tropical plant of the pea family which is used to dye cloth. The indigo plant grows primarily in the tropics. By the 13th century, Indian indigo was being used by cloth manufacturers in Italy. So you see, the indigo plant grows primarily in the tropics. That's why it says tropical plant. By the 13th century, Indian indigo was being used by cloth manufacturers. So Indian indigo, it was being used by cloth manufacturers in Italy, France, and Britain to dye cloth. So you see, Italy, France, and Britain, in order to dye cloth, they use this color. However, only small amounts of Indian indigo reached the European market and its price was very high. However, only small amounts of Indian indigo reached the European market and its price was very high there. European cloth manufacturers therefore had to depend on another plant called wood to make violet and blue dyes. So European cloth cloth manufacturing people, okay, persons, therefore they had to depend on another plant which is called wood in order to make violet and blue dyes. Being a plant of the temperate zones, wood was more easily available in Europe. So as it is a plant of the temperate zones, temperate areas, wood was more easily available in Europe. It was grown in northern Italy, southern France, and in parts of Germany and Britain. So, in such places, it was easily available. Worried by the competition from indigo, wood producers in Europe pressurized their governments to ban the import of indigo. So, to compare with indigo, okay, uh, in that competition, indigo was far better, and that's why wood producers in Europe, they pressurize, they make pressure their governments in order to stop importing of indigo from India. Cloth dyers, however, preferred indigo as a dye. Cloth dyers, those were dyeing, that means clothes. However, they like indigo as a dye. Indigo produced a rich blue color, whereas the dye from wood was pale and dull. So color of indigo, it was better in order to compare with wood. That wood, its color was pale and dull. By the 17th century, European cloth producers persuaded their governments to relax the ban on indigo import. So you see, By the 17th century, again, European cloth producers they persuaded their governments in order to relax the ban on indigo import. The French began cultivating indigo in Saint Domingue in the Caribbean islands, the Portuguese in Brazil, the English in Jamaica, and the Spanish in Venezuela. So here you see the French they started cultivating indigo in Saint Domingue in the Caribbean islands. Caribbean islands means this island of Caribbean Sea. The region is southeast of the Gulf of Mexico and the North America mainland. The Spanish in Venezuela, indigo plantations also came up in many parts of North America. So indigo plantation it also came up. Okay, it also started to grow in many parts of North America. By the end of the 18th century, the demand for Indian indigo grew further. So by the end of 18th century, the demand for Indian indigo it grew further. Okay, demand which was made by the people, it was more. That means many people they like Indian indigo. Britain began to industrialize. Industrialize means develop industries on a wide scale, and its cotton production expanded dramatically, creating an enormous new demand for cloth dyes. Britain they started to develop their industries on a wide scale, creating an enormous means extend very large in size, new demand for cloth dyes. As Britain began to industrialize, Britain began to develop industries on a wide scale, and its cotton production expand dramatically in a way that relates to drama like that, creating an enormous new demand for cloth dyes. So it created what an extent very large in size for new demand for cloth dyes. While the demand for indigo increased, its existing supplies from the West Indies and America collapsed for a variety of reasons. So here while the demand for indigo it increased, its existing supplies from the West Indies and America it fall down for a variety of reasons. Uh, so different reasons were there. Between 1783 and 1789, the production of indigo in the world fell by half. So in between 1783 and 1789, the production of indigo in the world it fell. It becomes half. Cloth dyers in Britain now desperately looked for new sources of indigo supply. See, cloth dyers in Britain now they extremely looked for new sources of indigo supply. From where could this indigo be procured? Means from where could this indigo be obtained, especially with care or effort? Boys, have a look towards the right margin of this page number 31. Plantation. A large farm operated by a planter employing various forms of forced labor. Plantations are associated with the production of coffee, sugarcane, tobacco, tea, and cotton. So read this one also and know it. Okay, let's up to here and let us meet in again in the next part of the chapter. Thank you all.